change is difficult. Historically, and I think today, church not always a big fan of change. However, maybe we should be fans of something new. Something new. Because something new can be wonderful and a surprise, but it's also linked to the past. But it may be something those in the past may not be able to foresee. So consider the phone in your pocket. The phone in your pocket, which contains a fairly powerful computer, contains a camera, and, surprisingly enough, a phone. Okay. Now, imagine the people who, and for our younger people, just bear with me, these things were real. Okay. Imagine the people of who were sending signals between different cities using drums or smoke. Could they have imagined that someday in the future they would have wires strung between cities and would be able to send little signals with a telegraph between them? No, that would have been brand new. And can you imagine the people who had the telegraph? Imagine that someday they would actually be here, not clickety, clickety, click, but voices over the phone line. Wow, that would be amazing too. And imagine those who hear voices over a phone line eventually would be able to pick up the phone in their house and walk away with it without having to worry about tripping over a cord. Oh my goodness, that would be wild to them. And imagine those people with that cordless phone being able to walk as far away from the phone base as they wanted to and everything would still work. Also unimaginable at the time, because new things are happening. And new things are tied to the past. Because if those earlier technologies, if those earlier innovations didn't happen, we would not have the cell phones we have today. Something new and the past linked together. Now, Isaiah is talking about that. So Isaiah is talking about that in the Old Testament lesson today. Isaiah is talking to people that are in exile, people that have gone through the history, and they are wandering, they are worried, they are concerned, they are suffering. They're like, why can't we bring back what we had before? So Isaiah reminds them, and he reminds them in a very poetic way. First, he reminds them, hey, remember the Exodus. Okay? Now, he doesn't say, remember the Exodus. No, he's got to do it in a nice poetic way. He's like, you remember when God had the chariots and the horses and they fell under the water and they never came back up? Well, that's a reminder of the Exodus. And people who were reading this, they knew that story. They knew that story. They knew right away that's what Isaiah was talking about. He didn't have to say, remember Exodus, horses, got that together? Nope, they remembered the whole thing. They knew that. But then Isaiah says something strange. Just after he told them to remember the past, he told them, but don't remember the past. Isaiah, what are you doing here? Isaiah is using some poetry to talk about a different way to look at the past. Not as something that is going to determine exactly what's going to happen. We're not going to be using the telegraph forever. We're not going to be constrained by phone cords. I don't know what's going to happen to the cell phone. Maybe it'll fly someday. I don't know. We just don't know. But we won't be constrained by the past in the new. And Isaiah is saying, people, you're struggling right now. But God's going to do something new. God's going to do something new. Now, there is a tendency sometimes for us like, well, God doing something new. God can't do anything new. God's perfect. It's always been the same way. God's doing new stuff all the time. All the time, God's doing something new. Something we wouldn't have expected, something that's different, something that's going to surprise us. God does something new. And Isaiah brings this across to us in yet some more poetry. Isaiah says, God's going to do something new. Not going to tell you what it is. It's going to be new. It's going to be new. But it's going to be so wild, so great that the whole wilderness is going to celebrate it. It's going to be so new, so great that jackals and ostriches are going to be part of the party. That's how wild and new what God's going to do is. God's going to do something new. God keeps doing new things. We have an example of God doing something new and a little bit of a challenge as well as we look at the Gospel of John today. So, Jesus, in this version of John, goes to his friend Lazarus and Martha's house. It's toward the end of his life. He knows what's coming. And apparently Mary does too. Mary of Bethany knows what's coming. So Mary takes this expensive thing called nard. I assume it's probably like hardened olive oil mixed with fancy smelly things that are expensive. And this is typically used to embalm someone after they have died or to prepare the body. I mean, it's not the same as embalming today. They give that after someone dies. So here's Mary taking this expensive stuff that would be probably used only when upper class people would pass away and putting it on Jesus's feet. Okay? So this is something new, something scandalous. You don't waste stuff like this. Something new, something scandalous. And embalming Jesus while he's still alive. Well, that's a little bit strange, isn't it? You do this with dead people. But what's going to happen is Jesus is not going to stay dead in the way that we think very long. He's going to come back. So this new thing that Mary's doing, this new thing that's happening, represents another new thing that's going to happen. Always looking to the new thing. Now, sometimes when something new happens, we people as people are like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Got to find some different explanation for that. Have done that with Mary doing the preparation for Jesus' feet. So I don't know if you've heard it, but there have been people who have talked about, Mary, which is a common name in the Bible, as this not being this Mary, but Mary Magdalene, which we hear about also in the Bible, one of Jesus' top disciples. Actually, we're going to hear about Mary a lot on Easter because who's the one who's paying most attention? Mary. Who's the one who has to tell everybody else? Mary. But Mary is a woman. How can a woman be at the front of all this? So there have been efforts to scandalize Mary, to say, oh, well, Mary really had a bad past. We shouldn't be listening to her. She had a past that even involved, what they call the oldest profession. So they tried to scandalize what Mary was doing. And we can't even identify what person she is by the gospel because there's more than a couple people called Mary in the gospel. But, we can't have a woman doing these extra special and groundbreaking things, we've got to scandalize it a little bit. But that's part of God doing something new. When God does something new, sometimes we have the urge to scandalize it, to make it feel like it's not the new and beautiful thing that it is, that it's something that we should be like, oh, can't have that. Can't have that. So there's another example of scandal here in our gospel lesson. And it comes courtesy of Judas. Okay? Now, you'll notice as you read through, John's got his issues with Judas. Puts him right there in the parentheses. Judas, a thief. Okay? So Judas sees Mary using these expensive spices, this expensive preparation on Jesus, and Judas says, hey, isn't this a little extravagant here? I mean, come on. We could have taken, why didn't she just take this expensive stuff that, I don't know where she got it, Why didn't she take that and sell it and give it to the poor? Now, John points out that Judas wasn't really about this giving to the poor. He was really about, complaining that he didn't have an opportunity to do more larceny. But don't we hear this today? Don't we hear this in our world today? Don't often people point to these verses and say, hey, Jesus said, you're always going to have the poor. There it is. It's right in the Gospels. Jesus said, you're always going to have the poor. So, why are we bothering? Why are we bothering? We saw in other places in the Gospel where Jesus, said, sell your stuff and give it to the poor, but we don't point to that. No. People point to, you're always going to have the poor. They're always going to be there. They're always going to be there. Sounds like a nice excuse. But I don't think we're reading it right. I don't think we're reading this correctly. I don't think that's what Jesus is telling us. I think Jesus has given us a challenge. That Jesus has given us a promise. That Jesus has given us a job. Because Jesus is telling us, you, meaning us, are going to have the poor. You are going to have the poor. They are going to be among you. They are going to be among us. And what is our job? Our job is to take care of them. Our job is not to ignore them. Our job is not to say, well, they're always going to be here because there ain't nothing new going to happen. Oh, something new is going to happen. Don't know what it is, but something new is going to happen. And the poor are ours. They are among us, and it is our job, given by God, to be stewards and to take care of them as best we can. Because we cannot say they're always just going to be here. That's not what Jesus is telling us. I don't think it is. I think Jesus is giving us a challenge to integrate people in our communities and have them be with us and to support them. So, as we close, one question we can ask, are we going to be ready when God does something new? Are we going to be ready when God does something new? Probably not. Probably not. Because God does new things. How can we be ready for it? How can we know? But when God does something new, will we be ready to accept it? Oh, that's where I think we can start preparing our hearts for the new thing, whatever it may be. That's where I think we can start praying to accept the new thing, whatever it might be. That's where I think we can start allowing the grace of God and the Holy Spirit to fill us, to accept the new thing, whatever it might be. Amen.